your Geoscope for the upcoming solar eclipse in Cancer, which is happening on the 20th of, or 21st of July. So I've had a quartz crystal on the geomantic cards, and so let's get this reading underway. So just to say that if you're not familiar with geomancy, it's a really nice addition to anyone's astrological practice, because it just allows you to kind of focus in a little bit more on the below. You know, astrology is great for giving you that overview, that sort of above eagle eye view, but sometimes it can be difficult to know how it's going to actually manifest in the 3D world. So this is where I find that the elemental sort of figures of geomancy work very well in kind of drawing your attention to themes that are likely to turn up during particular like major astrological events like this one. So this this eclipse will start a new 6-month cycle for the collective that will take us through until December. We've got an eclipse coming in November, but it's a lunar eclipse, so similar to the way that this eclipse series started, and then we will move into the solar eclipse, which will take us into the solstice corridor, the winter solstice corridor, and leading up to culminating in the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. So I think it's good to see this time as sort of preparation for that, this particular 6-month cycle. But let's see what messages we have for you today in relation to this particular eclipse. Interesting. So your first card, this represents you, the first house. So at the time of the eclipse and going forward for the next 6 months, your main focus is going to be on a personal level on on abundance, basically, on improving opportunities to expand for success, to invite more grace and flow into your life, to get more support from your soul tribe, from people in positions of power, who are, who can either protect you or help you. So this is the Sun in Leo, so really positive energy. It's the energy of, wanting to shine your light, of feeling confident, but it's it has a kind of an air element to it. So it's also about relating to other people, and this is what is kind of important, is seeing that very often our success is the result of collective effort, that what you're doing, it sort of feeds into or helps others, or in some way benefits others, or is kind of done in conjunction with your spirit guides. So there's usually some kind of element of interaction. It could also be just interaction with the cosmos, with the 4 elements themselves in order to manifest. But certainly, that's a big focus for you over the next 6 months. So interesting, a lot of the signs got this card in this position. So this is the 4th house of, you could say, it's your roots. If we think about the midheaven icy axis as a tree, then this is the roots and this is the branches. So this is about home, it's about belonging, it's about where you live. So it can be, the country that you live in, where you sort of come from, also origins. So this can be genetic, or it can be more intangible, so gifts, talents, skills, or abilities. But here we seem to be closing out a cycle, because we've got Cauda Draconis, which is the south node. So this usually kind of resonates more strongly with lunar eclipses. So it could be that there is still kind of residue of things that need to be released during this particular, the early portion of this eclipse cycle. And this seems to be letting go of either, where you currently are based, possibly relocating. That may be one way that this works. It could also be, kind of letting go of this need, or this sort of, the need to be around what's familiar, which can sometimes hold you back, if you're wanting to expand. So say, for example, your in order to expand your career, you need to travel more. Then sort of being a homebody is really just about being afraid of, kind of putting yourself out there. So there's something around this to do in terms of a karmic cycle that needs to be released. Interesting. So this is your 7th house, Libra, and for Librans this is a really important house because this is the house of relationship, and it's usually significant one-to-one relationships with other people. So it's usually marriages, long-term partnerships, it can be business partnerships too. And very often there can be a contract of some kind or an agreement, a bond that is formed over time and that requires commitment and work. So here we've got the card conjuncture, which is actually the card of marriage. Now this doesn't have to be a sort of a literal marriage. It can be a figurative one. It can be coming together or collaborating with others. It's also about balancing opposites. So if things have been a little bit out of sorts with key people in your life, family members perhaps, this is a time of coming back into balance with them, of coming into contact with perhaps new soulmates who've got lessons to teach you and vice versa. So it could be about meeting new people. If you're single, this could also indicate meeting someone significant, because this is significant partners. We tend to have new loves in the 5th house and they then progress to the 7th house. So it could also be a case that if you have been in a less serious relationship, that it now becomes more serious and committed. It kind of steps up a level. And then we've got Caput Draconis. Interesting. So we've actually got the head and the tail of the dragon across the MCIC axis, so the vertical axis in your chart. Now, Caput Draconis is, as I say, the head of the dragon. So this is usually the north node in astrological speak, and that is usually, depending on how you interpret it, evolutionary astrologers would say that it is, the start of a new karmic cycle and sort of an evolutionary cycle. Certainly in geomancy, it's about things coming in, so it's about new beginnings. So things kind of crossing the threshold, and in much the same way, it's kind of almost echoing the idea of the solar eclipse itself, and eclipses of course occur on the nodal axis, because nodes are really just where the sun and the moon's paths intersect. Basically, that kind of crossing point is what a node is. So you are beginning a new cycle in your career, and certainly in terms of your future direction of travel. So this could also be coming into alignment with your soul purpose, but certainly there does seem to be a very important new cycle starting for you at the solar eclipse, which is in itself is beginning a 6-month cycle for everybody. So that's really interesting. I'm just going to pause the video for a second while I go and do the calculations for the rest of your geomantic figures, and I'll be back with you in a minute. Hi Libra, welcome back. As you can see, I've done all the conversions and I've put all the geomantic figures into their correct houses. If you're interested in learning geomancy, you can go to my website and download my free conversion sheet, it's kind of got instructions, step-by-step instructions of how to convert your geomantic figures from the first 4, which you can cast either using dice, you can use cards like I use, you can also use a piece of paper. So, go check that out if you're interested. But let's get into your reading anyway. So, as I was saying, you've got this new cycle starting in your 10th house, which is career, as well as soul purpose, future direction of travel, etc. Now, it's interesting because this is where the eclipse is going to happen for you. So the sun and the moon will be in Cancer in your 10th house at the time of the eclipse, and it's interesting that we've got this figure of Caput Draconis in your 10th house, because Mercury, which will be close to the sun and the moon at the time of the eclipse, will be making a conjunction to the fixed star Sirius. Now, Sirius is considered to be one of the brightest stars in our galaxy, so it's a really important and prominent star, and it's always considered to be very fortunate in kind of astrological terms. So it's interesting that you've got this in your 10th house, which is really about shining. It's about shining your light in the world and not being afraid to shine your light, as well as enjoying recognition from others, because this is about success. It's also about kind of a public profile. So it can be about positions of authority, it can be about fame, lots of lots of ways that this can express itself. But needless to say, what I love is how the geomancy so often confirms the astrology. I think it's incredible. So so yes, this is incoming energy. This is a brand new 6-month cycle where the source of expansion for you is going to be definitely in your career. That's going to be the predominant sort of overriding theme for you, over the next 6 months. But having said that, we also have this repeated in your 8th house. So it seems as though whatever happens in your career, as I was saying, when we were talking about Fortuna Minor, seems to have to do with working or collaborating with other people, because you've also got Dracona starting in your 8th house. Now, the 8th house is closely linked to the 7th house. You could almost say that it is the equivalent of the 1st and the 2nd houses, but when it comes to one-to-one relationships. So this is really about shared possessions that you share with one other person, a significant other, and usually this is either a spouse, a marriage partner, a committed relationship, a business partnership, or some kind of like an agent, a manager, somebody that you've signed a contract with and that you have a long-term sort of connection to. So you also seem to be starting a new cycle there, and it's interesting that you've got conjunctio coming up quite significantly, both in your 7th house and as the outcome of your reading. So, and you've got it in your 12th house. So to me, that kind of says that whatever success is coming your way is, number one, the result of collaboration with others. So it is, it's recognizing that we are all connected, and that, what happens to you is to some degree to do with your impact on others, or how others are helping you. And this can also be your spirit guides, so that's just something to think about. So it's almost this kind of collection of energy that is a culmination. It manifests in you, but it may be because of all these different connections that you have had, these different impacts that you've made on individual people's lives, that has kind of built up a kind of cumulative effect. So that's one expression of this energy. Then the other one is around trust and around psychological connection, because the 8th house very often has not only to do with shared possessions, like if you're in a joint venture, if you both co-own shares in a company, dividing the assets when you get divorced, etc. But it's also to do with more intangible resources, so sex, death, taxes, as well as things like trust, intimacy. So you could see the cusp of the 8th house as being almost your boundary between yourself and others, and it's of course how much you let that boundary down that determines the level of your closeness to others. Now, of course, sometimes people violate your trust. You kind of let them in, and then afterwards you come to regret it. But what I'm sort of picking up on is that on some level, this particular cycle is also about kind of coming back into a place of trust and sort of faith that joining with others is not always going to end badly. And the reason that I say this is because you do have Tristia, which is about kind of suffering, loss and grief, in 2 of your houses. One here in your 11th, which is the house of friends and social media, so social connections, group affiliations. And then secondly, in your 6th house, which can be health, but it can also be work colleagues, pets, that kind of thing. So you may have suffered losses or hurt in one of those 2 areas that deeply wounded you, and it's taken you a while to kind of get back on your feet and to actually open yourself up again, to open up your heart chakra again. And that's what I feel that this conjunctio energy is about, is the reopening of the heart chakra, and a sort of an openness to connection with others again. So I think that's why you've got it in your 7th house of partnerships. You've got it in your 12th house of your psyche and the collective, because this is also where we connect to this sort of the collective unconscious, if you like. It's also our subconscious mind. So you know, deep-rooted beliefs there about relationships. So you could say that this may have something to do with attachment styles, for example. You may be working on changing those. So, you know, I think that's just something to sort of bear in mind as a sort of an adjunct to this cycle that's starting for you, you know, where the energy of the sun and the moon will be. That, you know, that these other houses may well be related, you know, to what happens. And it's interesting that we've got Fortuna Minor reflected here in both the first and the second house. So that also sort of tells me that it's almost this sort of mirroring idea of, you know, in order to sort of bring about positive changes, you have to sometimes open yourself up to support from others, being able to ask for help, which again, you know, trust, you know, talking to other people. And the self-worth is also a big part of this, because the second house is not just physical possessions or earned income, although it can be, but it's also having more confidence in your talent, skills and abilities, which of course relates to the 10th house and you know, success, but also self-worth. So you know, I think that this expansion of energy is sort of happening in two areas of your life, not just your physical appearance and your kind of outlook, the way that you project yourself into the world, but also in terms of the way you value yourself, self-worth. And of course that makes a massive difference when it comes to how we connect with others, you know, both in the collective sense and, you know, in the kind of one-to-one sense. So overall, it looks really positive for you, Libra. You know, I mean, I would just sort of finish that up by saying, you know, that this 6-month cycle is really moving into a sort of a place of healthier, you know, relating, you know, not over-giving, which is what the 8th house can be. Having very clear sort of boundaries, but not shutting people completely out. And yes, and then sort of over and above that, we also, you know, I was talking about potential sort of relocation or travel here, and we've got travel, we've got Via in the 5th house. So this can be the place, the house of holidays. It can also be the house of creativity. So it's possible that whatever expansion is happening in your career sector may involve some kind of travel. So that's just something to bear in mind. But I think that you know, if we look at the overall cards for your sort of outcome, we've got Fortuna Major, which is it's expansion and gain in the sort of most basic sense. But it's interesting that it's reflected in your 9th house. So I think what it's saying is that even though this card can very often be about material gain, which can come through an expansion in your career, and through a change in your outlook, a kind of expanded, more positive outlook. In your case, it may also be spiritual gifts that are coming in. You can be perhaps opening your intuition up to new abilities. It's possible that you may reconnect with some of your starseed gifts and talents, your sort of your inherited gifts and talents from past lives in other galaxies. It could also be that you connect more strongly to your spirit guides. You could just get a you know, more of a sort of sense of abundance through doing more specific practices, spiritual based practices around abundance. So, you know, not sort of taking the law of attraction and then really kind of plugging it into the way that your philosophy of life, basically, your beliefs and that kind of thing. But on a more literal level, it can be expansion as a result of either publishing, number one, or foreign connections or foreign travel, some affiliation with a foreign organization. Sometimes it can also be education, so it can be teaching, but at a higher level. So this is very often tertiary education. So it's, you know, either university, college, that kind of thing, sort of, or vocational, of course, but it's not school. School tends to be 3rd house. So all in all, really, really positive expansion for you. And then we've got material gain. So I'm just going to read you the 2 keywords here so that you can distinguish between the 2 of them. But, you know, the key thing to say is that this is the sun in Leo. So it's sort of diurnal masculine energy. And then we've also got Jupiter in its diurnal placement of Sagittarius. So this is fire and fire. 2 lots of fire. So quite enthusiastic, you know, energy. But Acquisitio is about material success, profit, riches, gain, attainable goals, expansion and absorption. So it's almost like this is kind of like the culmination of efforts that you have put in elsewhere, hard work. So if you have had trouble in the past in terms of your work, maybe with colleagues, or just a run of bad luck in terms of losing projects, losing freelance work, for example, as due to COVID-19, then I think you're going to see an upswing now during the next 6 months. So that's great. And then Fortuna Major. So this is good fortune, good luck, chance, serendipity, power, effortless success, social mobility, winning disposition, victory, inner strength, and natural charisma. So this is a pouch open to receive gifts. So this is, really about a sort of an openness to the cosmos and to other people that then allows things to sort of come in. So it's almost, in a way, it's that, that receptive divine feminine energy that is magnetic, that is open to receiving. And of course, Leo is associated with the heart. And, this is really where the divine feminine energy is kind of located and sort of emanates from. And so if you kind of base yourself in that, then I think that you're going to get the relationship bits right, and you're also going to open yourself up to help from higher realms and potential expansion in your career. So really, really positive. And it's interesting that we end with conjunctio, which, as I say, we do seem to sort of culminate in this idea of coming together, of collaborating, of things coming together, I mean, circumstances coming together, in the sense of, serendipity. So it could be that you get a lot of lucky breaks over the next 6 months that really allow for this new cycle, this expansion to happen, both on a personal level, on an interpersonal level, and then also, on a career level. So again, such a positive reading, Libra. This is your second positive reading in a row. Really thrilled for you. I hope it's been helpful. I'm going to be doing a personalized astrology forecast for all 12 signs. So if you're interested in getting access to that, then just go and subscribe to the newsletter on my website. If you go to astrologysphere.com/subscribe, you'll get access to that. But in the meantime, I'm wishing you all the best for the upcoming solstice and eclipse, and I'll catch you for my next forecast, which will be for the lunar eclipse in Capricorn.